Hola, buenos días. Apologies, my Spanish is not very good, so I will switch to English if that's okay. Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for welcoming me to Madrid. I am from New York originally. A little about myself. My name is Michael, as we introduced already. I've been in the mobile industry for almost 10 years now. I started back in around 2008, 2009, when the app advent was really starting to kick off. So, been through a lot of changes and really excited to talk about some of those today. We have a pretty light agenda for what we're going to talk about. We're going to start off with changes within the mobile space that we've noticed and observed at IBM. Then we're going to talk about how mobile has to interact with the real world and how we're noticing some interesting ways that that is taking place today. And then finally, we're going to look into some future technologies that we think are very interesting and that we think might take the industry forward in the near future. So let's get started. First, the changes. And this is a big one. Mobile is not mobile. What do I mean by that? Well, for the last few years, we had this idea about what mobile was. It was something that you did when you were out and about. You would walk past a store, or you would walk towards a stadium of an event that you were going to. Or you would arrive at an airport and you would receive a targeted message. And we built on this use case for years. We had this idea that we would do something like this, where you would walk past a Starbucks and you'd receive a message driving you into the store. But the truth is much lazier. We found out that customers are much more likely to be at home, sitting on the couch, or at work, sitting at their desk, when they receive a mobile message, or when they interact with their mobile device. It turns out that what makes mobile so great is that it just is the easiest device to access, regardless of where you are, even if you're sitting in front of a much more powerful machine like a computer. So when you're developing use cases around mobile, try not to think about it too much about actually being mobile or actually going in between destinations, but just it being the easiest device to access. It is, in many places, the gateway to your brand. So that's the first piece. Number two, the consumer is overloaded. One of the great things about our technology today is that brands can now reach customers in ways that we had never been able to do in the past. Every channel, whether it's email or social or mobile or direct mail or in-person events, we can reach customers now in ways that are very exciting and new. The problem is that customers are overwhelmed by the amount of messages they receive every day. Not only can you reach all those customers in all of those directions, but so can every single one of your competitors and every single company that they interact with every single day. In fact, customers continue to fight back against an over-monetization of these messages. You'll see things like ad blockers, or opting out of receiving certain types of emails or messages, or even completely ignoring your message. So how do you differentiate? How do you make your message stand out among this ocean of messages? Well, it's pretty simple. You need to think about the experience. You need to understand that your message is probably the least important thing that a customer will receive that day. There's no way that a discount on a piece of clothing that they're interested in is more important than someone taking a picture of their kids, right? So you need to understand that when you're messaging customers, their life is happening in the background, in the foreground, to be honest. And so we need to think about how your message can best influence and be a part of their lives. And we do that through personalization. And not just, using the customer's name, but really personalizing, truly personalizing that message. Number three, mobile must interact with the real world. Mobile no longer lives in a silo. We would argue that maybe it never did, but now mobile must interact with the real world. We're at a really exciting stage in this. Now, we have been doing something like this for a long time. We've been able to send messages based on a customer's location, right? That's interacting with the real world in some way. Later, we were able to use other types of data to send messages to customers, maybe if they not only arrive at a location, but if the weather is going to be different or relevantly changed based on where they came from. So that was kind of a predictive era of messages. We think we're entering what we call the cognitive era of engagement, which is being able to not only understand where customers were, use historical information to make that customer excited about the message they'll receive, but to also predict where they might go. So maybe if they're coming from Paris versus coming from London, they might receive a different message when they land in Madrid, based on the weather conditions that they came from. But that can actually be different going forward. We can even do things like analyze social media feeds. So if somebody posted on their Twitter account that they're very excited to go kayaking in their next trip to San Francisco, they might receive a message from a rental car company that says, "Welcome to San Francisco. We've already added a rack to your car so that you can mount a kayak." Right? So really relevant, really valuable to that customer using predictive and cognitive information. Really exciting. Now, the Internet of Things takes this to a whole new level. Right now, we have the technology to turn our lights on and off with our phones. Okay, fine. I don't know if that's easier than just turning it on, but at least I don't have to get up, which goes back to that point about being lazy. I'm particularly lazy, so it's kind of nice. But there's nothing to say that within a few short years, our refrigerators will be able to understand if we are low on hot sauce and be able to order an additional bottle for us automatically so that we never run out. And that's going to go directly through whatever provider that refrigerator partners with to order the food. And so these industries are being disrupted, and we're going to talk about that now. The next phase in what we see technology taking us is understanding customer sentiment, understanding what a customer means when they do something or say something. The first challenge was being able to speak and engage with customers wherever they are, right? And that was difficult, but I think we solved that. We're at the stage now where our channels can talk to each other. The email channel knows what the mobile channel is doing, and they can speak to each other. So we're at that stage. The next stage was reporting across channels, being able to not just engage with those customers, but to understand how they behave, which channels they prefer, and how we can gear messages or content in those various channels. That was even more difficult, but I think we're here too. I think we've gotten to the stage where we can understand how customers behave across channels. The next challenge is going to be understanding customer sentiment. What do I mean by this? If you asked me today how the United States presidential election was going, and I said, "Great," what did I really mean that? A computer might look at that and say, "Oh, it's going great. Okay, I'll respond with an answer." But what did I really mean? That sentiment is very important. And artificial intelligence is taking us to a place where we can understand what a customer means when they say or do something. So keep an eye out for technologies that allow you to do this. Next, we're going to talk about the Disruptor Equation. With enough time, technology will disrupt every industry. I think it's understood that this is true, right? It's easy for us to talk about certain industries. The question is, though, is when your industry is next. We can talk about Airbnb and Uber and how they changed the taxi industry or the hotel industry. But what's interesting is why they were disrupted, why those industries were so changed after these technologies. It wasn't because the technology didn't exist before Uber or Airbnb. It already existed. Any taxi company, in fact, many of them now do this, but any taxi company could have built an app that used location that you can hail and pay within the app. That wasn't the hard part. The hard part was the imagination. And the point I'm trying to make here is that we are not limited by technology. In rare cases are we limited by technology. Almost everything I've said today is possible to do today. The question is, are we imaginative enough as marketers to create these new use cases? So when every new trend comes out, think about what those use cases might be. Develop them. Build them within your organization. Understand what the demand might be for those use cases. And finally, test. Test with a small budget. Around this time of the year, a lot of marketers get a little extra money for the festive season. And so it's a great time to test a new channel. Maybe you want to have a Snapchat channel, or maybe you want to try something on WhatsApp, or try a brand new market that's using a technology that's completely different from yours. It's interesting and it's important that you at least stay ahead by testing these new technologies. Now, let's look into the future, what these technologies might be. We'll start off with a very popular one, a very obvious one, group messaging. Who here uses WhatsApp? Basically everyone, right? Interestingly enough, a lot of these group messaging apps are regional. So in Europe, WhatsApp is very popular. Latin America is also very popular. In the United States, a lot of Americans use iMessage with iPhones. But if you go to China, you use WeChat. If you go to Japan, you use Line. All of these group messaging apps are very regional and they become popular within their areas. But what's interesting is that some of these messaging apps are beginning to open up their channels to marketers. WeChat in China has opened up their channel so that marketers can now engage with customers in that market. Same thing for Line in Japan. We see the same thing with group messaging. I think we'll soon see WhatsApp taking that approach, as well as Facebook, who is already there. So group messaging. Think about how we can engage with customers beyond SMS or push notifications. We think group messaging might be the next frontier for mobile messages. Artificial intelligence. Within 5 years, every piece of software that you use will have some cognitive capabilities. Much of the technology and the software that you use today already has cognitive capabilities. If you use Android or iOS, you already use it. You use some predictive capabilities built right within your operating system. But every single piece of technology, from your car to your refrigerator to your toaster, will have some form of predictive cognitive capabilities. We're already there. So as we look at things like how marketers can use artificial intelligence, a lot of times the early use cases are starting off with either ways to make the marketer's day easier by predicting where customers might go or how a customer might interact with your message, but also things like customer service, being able to interact with customers using an artificial intelligence mind. And that brings us to the next technology, which is bots, chatbots, essentially group messaging plus artificial intelligence, being able to combine those technologies. So a big platform today is Facebook Messenger. Facebook Messenger has one of the earlier bot platforms that are very popular, but there's also other chat applications that have bots like Slack and a few others. Being able to send a message to customers and engage with them without actually having to have a person write back. Why would that be valuable? Well, for example, if I want to see if I've ordered something, I placed an order and I want to see if it's actually arrived, I can just type into my chatbot and say, "Where's my order?" And it will respond, rather than going to the website or downloading the app, logging in, going to my account page, going to my orders page, and then seeing if it's done. Making things easier. Wearables. Also an exciting industry, very early stages. If you think about how many customers owned a smartphone in 2007, when the iPhone was announced, it was very small. Even 2 years after that, with the iPhone 3G and 3GS. These devices were popular, but not nearly as essential as they are today. And we believe wearable technology, whether it's through watches or glasses or shoes, will all be an essential component of our lives. Right now, I use an Apple Watch for fitness tracking. It's essentially analytics on my body. If I exercise or if I don't exercise, I get notifications and it keeps me on track. And it's a great tool. And I think we will see more use cases over time beyond just fitness for wearables. Finally, virtual reality and augmented reality. This is probably our future. A little scary, but interesting. This is Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook F8. This was the conference where they announced the Oculus Rift, which is a virtual reality headset. Right now, the headset and virtual reality is focusing a lot on sight and sound, and just starting to focus on touch. But we need to think that every single sense, from sight, sound, touch, smell, even taste, can be replicated through artificial means. We're very close to the day where you can put on a glove or even a full bodysuit, and if a gust of wind blows in your video game that you're playing, you might even feel it on your shoulder. Right? So there's actually a great book on it called Ready Player One. They're making a movie about it, I think, next year. That kind of goes into the future of what virtual reality might bring us. And then augmented reality, being able to enhance the present without having to completely change where you are. So really exciting technology, really interesting for marketers, but anybody designing experiences for their customers. What we're really looking at doing here is using the new technology, embracing it, understanding it, and creating use cases that will benefit our customers to create the perfect experience 1 billion times a day. Gracias.